Hey guys, it's Holly from Holly's Hobbies, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make your own ergonomic crochet hook with a Valentine's Day twist. I've been using ergonomic hooks now for about 2 years. I have rheumatoid arthritis and it makes a huge difference in the pain and fatigue I normally feel. The big thing about ergonomic hooks is the shape and how you actually grip a hold of the hook. It takes away so much of the cramping. I find that my hands don't seize up like they normally would with metal hooks. So today we're going to be making a hook that's very similar to this one. As I said, it's going to have a bit of a Valentine's Day twist on it because we've got Valentine's Day coming up. But you can take away from the video just the basic shape of the hook, and you can make your own design. I've done under the sea, I've done unicorns, I've done cows, I've done a whole bunch of different themes. So today we'll be working with Valentine's Day, but hopefully you guys will be able to make your own special designs. So let's get started. Okay, so here's what you'll need to make your hooks. The first thing is you're going to need 2 soft bristle paint brushes, nothing big. I like to use a flathead and a smaller one for the more precision stuff, but they don't need to be anything extra special. Now you'll also need a metal crochet hook. It can be essentially any size. It doesn't really matter, Bates or Boy, it doesn't matter the make. Just make sure that it's metal and not plastic, since we will be baking the hook in the oven. You might need a little bit more clay for the larger size hooks, but again, size doesn't matter. The clay that you'll be using, or that I specifically use, is the Sculpey Primo bakeable clay. It doesn't necessarily have to be this brand. As long as it's an oven baked clay and not the air dry clay, it'll work just the same. I find that the accents ones, they come with different like sparkles and cool looks, but they are a little bit more difficult to work with. But again, any oven baked clay will work for your hook. Now you will need rubbing alcohol, and I use this to specifically smooth out any fingerprints or little tiny notches that I might get in the hook as I'm making it. You won't need very much of it, just a little bit. You will also need the gloss glaze from Sculpey. I use this just to kind of give the hook a nice sheen as soon as it's done baking, and it kind of seals everything onto the hook as well. The next thing you're going to need is the Sculpey Bacon Bond glue. This is what essentially holds the hook into place. So when you're making the hook, you need to put this on the hook itself so the clay adheres to the hook. And anytime you use little features that you want to add on to it, like decorations, you'll be using the Bacon Bond to attach it. Now this is optional, you guys don't have to use this. I got some mini metal cutters to use for the hearts, but you can use an X-Acto knife or any little tiny device to cut out the little shapes to put on top of it, but this just makes the video a little bit easier and quicker to go. Now I've got a whole bunch of these polymer clay tools. These are 2 that I like to use a lot. It's got the cutter and a little pointed end on it there for more precision drawing. When I do my sizes on my hooks, you can use either a stamp or you can use the pointed end to kind of like carve in what the size of the hook is there. So let's get started. So for my hooks, I usually use about half of one of these bricks. They're broken down into 4 little pieces, and I break 2 pieces off to use for the top and the bottom of the stick. Now it takes a bit for it to work in, especially these accent ones, so you have to really work it in before we start applying it to the hook itself. We're going to start off by using the Bacon Bond glue, and we're just going to apply a thin layer to where you hold the hook in your hand, and that's typically the part where the hook is flattened and it's got the size of the hook imprinted on it. So don't forget the size of your hook, because we will be covering this part up with clay. So we're going to push the top of the hook through the clay ball and just push the clay down to that flattened area on the hook. And you're going to work that ball into a teardrop shape, exactly where you hold the hook in your hand. Just going to take an X-Acto knife here. I'm just going to flatten down the top here. Just make sure you get off all the extra. There we go. So that is the first part of your hook there. Now, after you've made the second ball of clay into almost like a fat cylinder, you're going to apply a thin layer of the Bacon Bond to the bottom half of the hook. So then not a perfect circle, but just kind of put it on. Go. So then just start working it, push it up to about here so you've got a bit of a finger space there. And then start working the bottom down. Try and keep the width up here a little bit skinnier than what it is up here. So now we're just going to take the rubbing alcohol here and just apply a light coat of it across the hook, and it just smooths out any imperfections like fingerprints and little marks there and gives the overall finish a smoother look. Now we're going to cut out about 7 to 8 small heart shapes. Like I said, you can use little metal cutters or you can just use an X-Acto knife to cut out the shapes. But cut out about 7 or 8 of them, and we're going to set one aside to use for the hook size marker. Now we're going to roll out 2 thin strands of clay. I did red and pink. You can do whatever colors that you'd like. And do them about 2.5 inches long. It's always better to make them longer rather than shorter because they will be trimmed down once we apply them to the hook. So just roll those out, and after you've rolled out 2 similar lengths in the strands, we're just going to lightly twist them together. Don't do it too tight or else you'll split the clay. So just lightly twist them together, and it kind of gives them a bit of a braided look. So just make sure you take one of your hearts there and stamp in whatever your hook size is. I'm using a 6mm hook. You can use a stamp, or you can carve it in with one of your pointed tools there. Then we're going to just essentially lightly brush on some glue onto the back of each of the hearts, and then gently press them to the hook. Press them firmly enough that it sticks to it, but not too much that you smush the shape of it. So just take the Bacon Bond glue and lightly brush the glue in the center crevice there of your hook. Once that's in place, you're just going to wrap the twisted strand around the center of that crevice there. You will have some excess, just lightly cut that off and pat the strand into place. So now we're going to take the heart that has the hook size on top, and we're going to just glue it on top of the twisted strand where the two ends meet. So you hide that little spot there, and just gently push it into place. So now we're going to roll a small pink ball and just glue it to the end of the hook. Sometimes when I'm making my hooks, I like to add on a little tiny hook and clasp to the end there, and so I can hook on stitch markers. Today it's just for aesthetic purposes, but if you want to get fancy, you guys can purchase their jewelry hook and clasps and add it to the bottom here so you can hook on stitch markers for the future. So we're just going to lightly apply some of the Bacon Bond glue to the back of the twisted strand, and then you're going to wrap it around the top of the pink ball that we just added on the bottom of the hook there, and just gently pat it into place. And if you have any excess strand, just cut it off so the two ends meet each other. So now you're going to bake your hook at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 minutes, a little bit longer if it's a thicker hook. After your hook has baked and you've let it cool down for about an hour, you're going to apply the gloss glaze to the top of it. Just do a thin layer over top of the entire hook. Let it dry for about 2 to 4 hours before you add at least one other coat. I usually give it a good 2 to 3 coats just to make sure everything's sealed in there, and it gives it a really nice gloss sheen on top of it.